Breaking news. A tragic event has unfolded in Nigeria as Venerable Edwin Achi, a priest of the Anglican Communion, and his wife have been executed. This horrifying act occurred after they failed to raise a ransom of 600 million naira. A man of God, a father, and a community servant lost his life because of the government's inability to protect its citizens. This incident is a grim reminder of the dangers faced daily in Nigeria. When we talk about the deteriorating security situation in Nigeria, some people treat it like a joke. Some brush it aside because they think it will never reach their doorstep. But the truth is simple. In today's Nigeria, tragedy no longer knocks. It walks straight in. And if you are still laughing, still pretending, still saying, "Ain't no concern me," just understand one thing. It could be your turn tomorrow, because what is happening across this country right now is not normal. It is not acceptable. And no matter how hard they try to downplay it, Nigeria is bleeding from wounds that those in power refuse to treat. In the past few days alone, the kind of horror that used to shock a nation now passes like routine headlines. Then, a man and his pregnant wife seized in Edo State by Fulani bandits who recorded them in the bush, sent videos to their family and demanded 50 million naira. The family has managed to raise just 7 million. What is the response of the Nigerian government? Silence, statements, condemnations, nothing more. Meanwhile, terrorists, real terrorists, armed with magazines, AK-47s and rocket launchers, confidently appear on camera, speaking to journalists like respected public figures. They brag, they negotiate, they mock the government. They boast openly that the federal government paid ransom to release their victims, and there is no arrest, no operation, no accountability, nothing. The government announced that 38 kidnapped victims in Kwara State had been released, but every single detail shows one thing: no force rescued them, no tactical team stormed the forest, no military confrontation took place. Everything points to ransom funded directly or indirectly with taxpayers' money. Yet the criminals responsible for kidnapping those people walk freely. They simply disappear back into the forest to start planning the next operation. This is the country we are living in. A country where the government negotiates with terrorists while imprisoning peaceful agitators. A country where those who kill, maim, destroy, abduct, and behead are called repentant, while ordinary citizens asking for justice are locked away with the full weight of the state. Every day on social media, we scroll past pictures of kidnapped victims like normal posts. Faces of men, women, teenagers, and even babies treated like casual content. People comment with chai and keep scrolling. Some laugh, some mock. But the reality is that behind those pictures are families living in a nightmare. Mothers who have not slept for days. Fathers who have sold everything they own. This country has normalized horror. But how did we get here? How did we reach a point where terrorists are more confident than citizens, where criminals can gather in the open, recording high-quality videos, showcasing their weapons, negotiating with government officials, and boasting about ransom payments? It didn't happen overnight. Nigeria's insecurity grew slowly, like a tumor ignored for too long, until it became impossible to ignore. Years of corruption, political negligence, failed intelligence, compromised officers, and weak leadership created the perfect environment for terror to thrive. When banditry first started, it was dismissed as cattle rustling. A few stolen cows, a few clashes. Nobody paid attention, but rustling turned into armed robbery. Armed robbery turned into kidnapping. Kidnapping evolved into mass abductions. and mass abductions became full-blown terrorism. Today, Nigeria has forests larger than entire countries. Forests fully under the control of armed groups. They have camps, they have commanders, they have foot soldiers, they have satellite phones, they have informants in towns, villages, police stations, ministries, and even within the military. These are not local criminals. These are networks, funded, armed, organized, and emboldened by the weakness of the Nigerian state. And the worst part? Many of these criminals were created by the same politicians who now pretend to be shocked by their existence. Some of the weapons in these forests were once used during elections. Some of the motorcycles used for raids were bought by political godfathers. Some of the commanders were once used as local enforcers. When the election ended, the guns were not collected. The money dried up. The boys were abandoned. And what did we expect abandoned armed groups to become? Farmers? And so, here we are today, watching a country crumble under the weight of monsters raised by its own leaders. The intelligence community is overstretched. The police force is underfunded. The military is fighting too many wars with too little equipment. Meanwhile, corruption eats everything from the inside. Money meant for security disappears into pockets. Weapons meant for soldiers are diverted. Operations leak before they start. Informants inside government pass information to criminals, and politicians behave as if they live in another universe, shielded by escorts, sirens, convoys, DSS agents, and bulletproof vehicles, while the ordinary citizen walks to the market with his life in his hands. The most painful part of this tragedy is how the government treats terrorists versus how it treats ordinary Nigerians. When terrorists strike, the government calls for negotiation. When citizens protest, the government calls them enemies of the state. When terrorists kill villagers, the government appeals for calm. When youths demand accountability, the government deploys the army. When terrorists massacre schoolchildren, the government sends committees. When activists speak too loudly, the government sends the police. Look at the pattern. The Nigerian state fears its citizens more than it fears terrorists. Why? Because terrorists do not threaten the political structure. Citizens do. Every time a community cries for help, the government asks them to be patient. But the terrorists they negotiate with have never been patient. They take what they want, they choose their victims, they determine the price, they dictate the terms. Nigeria is now a place where criminals are more powerful than the justice system. The human cost is devastating. Farms abandoned, schools shut down, markets emptied, entire communities displaced, people living in IDP camps for years with no hope of returning home, families paying ransoms worth more than their life savings, women raped, girls forced into marriage, boys recruited into militias, pastors killed, imams killed, traditional rulers kidnapped, students marched into forests like cattle. And because the government refuses to confront the real sponsors of these terror networks, the cycle continues endlessly. What is happening in Nigeria today is not insecurity, it is state collapse. When the government cannot protect citizens but can negotiate with terrorists, that is state collapse. When criminals walk freely but victims live in fear, that is state collapse. When the forests become safer for criminals than cities are for ordinary people, that is state collapse. When people pray before leaving their homes because they are not sure they will return, that is state collapse. But perhaps the most dangerous part of this crisis is the silence of the international community. Foreign governments issue statements, they express concern, they offer condolences, but they do nothing. Why? because Nigeria has become too unstable, too unpredictable, too corrupt, too dangerous, but also too useful. A chaotic Nigeria gives foreign powers leverage. They benefit from the instability. They benefit from the weakness. They benefit from a country that is too busy fighting for survival to notice how the world is using it. Meanwhile, ordinary people suffer. Ordinary people die. Ordinary people disappear into forests, tied with ropes, beaten with sticks, surrounded by mosquitoes, scorpions, reptiles, and men with guns. And every day we say, God forbid, as if God himself has not been watching the same tragedy repeat for years. What happened to Ven? Edwin Achi is not an isolated case. It is a symptom of a sickness that has infected the entire country. And until Nigerians themselves demand accountability, real accountability, the cycle will continue. The truth is simple. Nigeria is not a poor country. Nigeria is a poorly managed country. Nigeria is not a weak nation. Nigeria is a nation weakened by its leaders. Nigeria is not destined for failure. Nigeria has been pushed toward failure by people who benefit from insecurity. And until the government stops treating terrorists like partners and citizens like enemies, nothing will change. We cannot continue like this. We cannot normalize evil. We cannot accept terror as part of daily life. If Nigeria is to survive, the leaders must understand one thing. A government that cannot protect its citizens has failed its most basic duty, and a country where criminals are free and victims are forgotten is not a nation. It is a graveyard waiting to happen. Because right now, Nigerians are not living. They are surviving, and survival is not the same as freedom.